Absolutely.
All right, and now to this. The U.S. accusing Russia of violating a landmark nuclear arms treaty, the one that was signed in 1987 by President Ronald Reagan, helping to end the Cold War. So what did the Obama administration do? It sent Russian President Vladimir Putin a letter calling this a serious matter. The serious matter involves Moscow allegedly test firing banned cruise missiles. Senior officials say it's been going on for several years now, dating back to 2008. Here's Governor Mike Huckabee reacting.
This is the Vladimir Putin who believes that he is sort of Superman. And he's like that teenage boy sitting up in his room. His mother says, "Don't make me come up there." But his mother hadn't been there in 5 years. I don't think that a strongly worded letter from Barack Obama, if he can get it sent off before his next round of golf, is going to matter to Putin. He simply doesn't care.
Your take on that, Kimberly?
Yeah, I think it's priceless. Go, Governor, right? I mean, what is there to say? Huckabee nailed it. It's really true. I mean, look at this kind of conduct. A strongly worded letter? Really? Let's be realistic here about outcomes.
So what was the purpose then? We have to ask ourselves that it was done, you know, and I'll go back to Colonel Ralph Peters last night. He basically said that while in the past the president was actually able to just cover things up and make it look like Russian-United States relations were okay, now we know that they're not, right. And this is a way to look like he's acting, he and his administration are acting aggressively without actually doing anything. Dr. Keith?
Well, you know, a letter acting aggressively. I think that he's shown his cards.
Right.
He can't exercise American power because he doesn't feel American. Right? So he's hamstrung the president because in order.
Birther?
No, I don't care where he was born, really, but I'm absolutely certain that in his heart and soul he feels that America has been to the detriment of the world generally.
I think he doesn't know what to do.
America,
I wouldn't even give him that much of a complex diagnosis. I think the guy has given up.
I think you're exactly wrong.
I don't think he knows what to do.
Wrong.
I don't think he has an ideology that informs.
Of course he does.
Policy.
He couldn't be more successful at doing what he wants to do.
I would agree that he has an ideology that American power. He came into office with this idea that Americans don't need to be the most powerful in the world. We've seen his foreign policy play out that way. On the issue of Vladimir Putin, October 22nd, 2012, Barack Obama in a debate with Mitt Romney said the 1980s called, they want their foreign policy back, and here we are 2 years later with a very serious foreign policy problem on our hands with the Russians. The issue of the letter is one thing. I think the good news is that the Europeans are finally getting on board with more economic sanctions, which I think at this point is the only way we're going to get him to pull back on those things. There's a lot more we could be doing here in the United States in terms of energy production that could help that.
The sanctions, but I don't know if the sanctions do anything with him. It almost emboldens him.
And the poll numbers in Russia prove your point. I mean, he has a 90% approval rating in Russia. I mean, when it comes to changing the minds of the Russian people, that's not happening.
Because the money's still flowing, Katie, and the purpose of tougher sanctions would be to cut that money line off.
Well, but the most important thing here is to pay attention to what the topic of the segment is, and that is that the Russians are being accused by the United States of violating a very serious treaty that was put into place by Ronald Reagan. And that's something that we should take seriously.
But Kimberly, we can send all the letters we want, but without action, does this really matter?
There's no bite to it. You know, it's like my guard dog that has no teeth. No one's really
you have a guard dog with no teeth?
Of course not. I had 2 Rottweilers in L.A.
Well, I mean, you said, so I just wanted to know if you actually had such a thing.
On the hypothetical.
It would be a wonderful psychological metaphor.
Nobody's worried about getting bitten by a dog that has no teeth.
Okay, so what are the teeth?
Yes.
So what do you? That's my question, because you can't exactly militarily engage a nuclear-armed country, or can you? What do you do?
You know what the problem is? This has been a consistent series of failures on behalf of this administration that is waffling at best in terms of its foreign policy.
Yeah.
And he really isn't interested in doing this. He's still in a position of being an apologist as an American. I understand what you're saying. It's not like where he was born. It doesn't matter. It's who he is inside, what he feels the role of the United States should be. He believes that we should be throttled back, that America is not the watchdog. We are not responsible.
Do you know what we're seeing here? Do you know what we're seeing here as far as the timeline?
And Putin
he can no longer blame Bush for his failures, especially on foreign policy, because he's tried to do that with the economy, even with the VA. But now he has run out of that narrative. There's no longer any gas in that engine.
I don't think he feels a sense of personal responsibility about it whatsoever. He's worried more about his legacy. He's worried more about the golfing, the fundraising, the Democrats, and his core ideology. That is what he wants to do. He said he was going to come in and fundamentally transform and change things, and I believe that he has done so, especially with respect to how the world views us, because Putin is unabashed and not afraid.
Kimberly and her toothless guard dog have the last word.